Welcome, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. I always forgot the name of the radio show.
Almost got your own name as well.
Oh,
Oh, gonna be a good show tonight.
yes. So, Unlocking Your Truth is a radio show, it's a podcast. We also live stream on our Facebook group, Awaken Your Psychic Abilities, and my YouTube channel. We broadcast the show on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, and we have been doing for about 5 years. So I don't know why I don't know what the show's called tonight.
And do you know
And
where we're
we,
broadcasting from?
the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation.
Very good.
So, Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And every week we have a different topic under that umbrella. And we love when our listeners join in live by following us on the Facebook group or the YouTube channel, because then, listeners, you can be in the chat room and you get to ask questions live during the show. Now, on this year on Unlocking Your Truth, we've been doing a series, and the series is all about intuition and chakras. And so every show, we have been talking about a different psychic ability that is channeled through the chakra system.
Yes.
And we're almost at the end. Almost. I think we've probably, well, actually, I say almost at the end. We've probably got 5 or 6 weeks to go, but we've already covered about 17 or 18 different psychic abilities. So if you are just tuning in and you've missed some of those episodes, I encourage you go back and listen. So tonight's show is about psychometry. And we're actually into the realm of psychic abilities where they're not simply channeled through a single chakra, but there are multiple energy centers working together in order to convey this psychic ability.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, so psychometry, I should probably explain what psychometry is. It is the ability to intuitively glean information stored in physical objects. That's one way of explaining it. So it is, you might have seen psychics where they will want to have a photograph of somebody, or they will ask for a piece of jewelry that they can hold in their hands. And then what they do is, from the piece of jewelry or possibly from the photograph, they are able to read information about the owner of that physical object. So the idea is that if you have a piece of jewelry and you, or even a piece of clothing, and you wear it every day, then that object is exposed to your energy. It's exposed to your energy, to your emotional content of your life, your thoughts, your beliefs, your passions, your life experiences, and it ends up taking on some of that energy. It ends up matching some of your energy. And so, in that way, a psychic who is using the power of psychometry is able to take that object and glean information about you from the object. Now, I'd also put in this category of psychic abilities using a pendulum. And so, I mean, I remember as a little girl, there used to be something that people used to do when they were having a baby. The pregnant lady would take her necklace off and then they'd hold the necklace and to determine the sex of the child. And if it went round in a circle, then it was going to be a girl. And if it went backwards and forwards, it was going to be a boy. I would say that that is a form of psychometry. But people use pendulums as well for yes no answers, or for psychometrizing different information about different things. So another common way of using a pendulum might be to sense the energy in food, for example. So if you're concerned about having allergies to foods, you can use a pendulum and hold the pendulum above the food, and it will have a particular energy pattern to inform you that the food is healthy and beneficial and nutritious, and another energy pattern to inform you that maybe not. And that's quite a fun thing to do. I used to do that a lot, just to see, well, which foods should I be eating? And it seemed like that, a circular pattern would relate to this food is beneficial for you, and the bigger the swing of the circle, the better the food was. And if it wasn't something that was suited my constitution, then it would go backwards and forwards.
Interesting.
Yeah, you played that game with me, didn't you, Corey?
Oh, yes. Callie says, sounds like a Horcrux in Harry Potter.
A Horcrux in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what a Horcrux is, but you'll have to remind us, Kaylee. So, and also, thirdly, I'd put the idea of dowsing as part of this psychic ability. So what is dowsing? Dowsing is the ability to basically read the land, to be able to trace ley lines in the land, to be able to find hidden sources of water in the land, and sacred spaces and places and energy vortices. And traditionally, dowsing is done with like a hazel twig or some kind of twig which has two branches that you can hold, and then one end, and the twig will move upwards when it encounters some energy in the earth. We also used to play a game with aura feelers. Sounds also like Harry Potter. And this is where you use a couple of copper rods, and those copper rods, as you move towards an energy field, will swing open. And as you move away from an energy field, will swing closed. So those are all examples of psychometry. And what are the chakras that are involved in psychometry? Well, obviously, the hand chakras. You have energy centers in the palms of your hands, and through those energy centers, you are able to feel and experience energy as a healer, right? So that's how healers are able to sense energy fields and blockages in people's energy when they're giving them a non-touch form of healing. But you can also sense and feel the energy of anything with your hand chakras. You could feel the energy, the auric field of a plant with your hand chakras, for example. And so when you're doing psychometry, you're working with the energy in the ability to sense energy within your hands, but also with your sixth and seventh chakras, in order to know and see information as well, as a way of translating the information stored in an object. And there is another really fun way that Corey and I use psychometry for. Can you recall what that is, Corey? Putting him on the spot now. We haven't been on holiday for a long time, especially now with COVID, but...
No, I don't remember.
when we visit historical sites, instead of hiring a tour guide, just put your hand on the building, on the statue, and translate the energy within the building or the statue in order to see what the story is of that historical site. And so it's quite possible to use psychometry to be your own tour guide. where you're able to sense historical, different ancient civilizations, for example. All right. So, folks, you're tuning into Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. And I haven't mentioned my book yet, so I probably should.
Go for it, Dr. Leslie. Have you written a book?
Yes, I did. It's called Intuition and Chakras. And one of the reasons we're doing a series on intuition and chakras is in celebration of the book. So the book, it's got these 22 different psychic abilities covered, and all of the chakras in the chakra system and how they relate to psychic abilities, as well as tools and techniques to help you to access your psychic abilities. So I am just going to look in the section.
Why don't you read something from your book, Dr. Leslie?
I'm going to read something from the book.
Oh boy.
And probably I've already said a lot of what's in here, but there's always a section in every psychic ability section in the book where it talks about sort of signs that you might have experienced yourself. So I'm going to read that section. So your psychometry skills. Anyone can learn to use this ability, but if you are particularly sensitive to energy fields in nature or connect with the past through objects and buildings, then you may already be experiencing psychometry. Everyone is unique, so while your experience might be vague or undefined, your way of perceiving is no better or worse than anyone else's. So don't invalidate your experiences based on the expectation that they should be vibrant, detailed scenarios. Here are some tips to help you identify the kinds of experiences that are due to this ability. So if, like me, you have ever been to a historical site and felt the walls were telling a story, if you enjoy antiques and love to imagine their history, or if you've been in an old room or old house and felt uncomfortable, then your attraction or repulsion might be telling you something. Perhaps you are a really tactile person who likes to hold objects in your hands to get a sense of them. For example, you've sensed the prior owner by feeling a used object. A piece of inherited jewelry makes you feel closer to a deceased loved one. Or perhaps when you look at old photographs of people, you can intuit something about them. Maybe when you're shopping and need to decide on a purchase quickly, you make your decision by touching the objects. Or you already own a pendulum, and this is one of your favorite tools for making decisions about food and nutrition, for example. If you do energy clearings on your house and surroundings, own a dowsing rod, or have been successful at sensing water or other energies, feel attuned to nature and the land, and have a fascination with ancient monuments or ley lines, then those are also clues of you tuning into your psychometry ability. Also, by the way, I always like to share some examples of people I know or people I've worked with. And it's a pretty cool example in this section of the book about this. Because I used to have a friend, I've lost touch with this friend now, but this friend worked in an auction house, and it was full of, obviously, old objects because they worked in an auction house. And they would find themselves, when they were handling the objects, pulled into the experience of where those objects had been. So maybe they were holding a Victorian vase and they would experience the Victorian room where the vase had been situated. And then they would psychically travel around the rest of the room in great fascination about what this Victorian drawing room or living room looked like. And yeah, they used to have to be quite careful to sort of pull themselves out and do their job, because they could go on a reverie of exploring the history of these objects all day long otherwise. So listeners, yeah, that's psychometry. And let me see, what else can we tell you about that? I read a really cool example of a famous psychic. You might not have heard of him, but I think he might be being Polish. He's not alive anymore. His name was Stefan Ozowski, and he was said to have an 80% success rate when performing psychometry on sealed envelopes. So they give him sealed envelopes and ask him to determine what the writing or the drawings inside was all about. And he also displayed amazing abilities with archaeological objects, and he was able to describe the lives of prehistoric people by holding a 10,000-year-old flint tool.
Wow.
After the Nazis invaded Poland, hundreds of people came to him with photographs of missing family and friends, and he tried to help them discover what had happened to each of those missing people. So that's a really cool way of using this gift, you know, helping identify and find missing people and identify what happened to them.
That is quite. I've never heard that used in that manner. I guess but then again, let me rephrase that. I've never put psychometry together with that form of psychic aid. You know, like with that. I have a couple of stories about psychometry we'll share after the break.
Sounds good. You're
think so?
tuning into Unlocking Your Truth, and we'll be back after these messages.
Okay.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello again.
This week's show is about the psychic ability known as psychometry, and which is an ability to sense energy stored in physical matter. And it is an ability that is channeled through the hand chakras, the sixth chakra, and the seventh chakra, all coordinating and working together. So that's what we've been talking about this evening. And we gave some great examples of psychometry in the first part of the show. I'd love to know whether any of our listeners have any experience playing with pendulums, doing dowsing, or reading the energy in objects. So listeners, if you're on the live listening on the Facebook group, the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, or the YouTube channel, then please share your stories. And in the meantime, Corey's got some stories.
Yeah, I have one that was very impressive. I went to it was around Halloween, I guess. We went to two of my friends. We went to the Spiritualist Church in Burnaby here in the Vancouver area, and it was a young lady who she's about 22 years old, and she was dressed in a goth outfit, right? But it wasn't a costume; it was actually how she dresses. I found out later. It's a friend's daughter, and I never met her before, but so she was going to do psychometry. And so there's about 30 of us in the room or so, and they passed around the basket, and you put a piece of jewelry or keys or something in there, and she would just pick them out one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting. And then she came to me and my friends, actually, you know, sporadically, and she got us to the letter. I mean, it was amazing. She for me, she got who I was, some of the challenges I was going through, all kinds of stuff. And there's no way she could have recognized. We'd never met, so there's no way she could have recognized my jewelry or anything like that. And I mean, we just came in, walked in, sat down, did that. And my friends too, she got them as well. And she'd never met, they'd never been to the church, the church there with me. So they were complete strangers, and she got them. One put keys in, another one, I forgot the other, her watch at the time. She put her watch in. But it was amazing. It was an amazing read. I've never seen an exhibition like that of psychometry. I saw one at a lady's home once, where we all sat in a circle and we did the same thing, put pieces in a basket, and then the person would take it out and hold it, not even look at it, but hold it, and then do a reading. And that was close. Some people were very, very close,
Yeah.
but not as many were. But that night, that was astounding.
No, that's great. I mean, I guess that's typically how it's done. I mean, you remind me of many, many, many years ago, probably 25 years ago, if not longer. One of the first psychic development courses I ever took, that was one of the exercises they did. Everybody in the group took off a piece of jewelry, put it on a tray, covered up by a cloth, and then each person got to, I can't remember whether each person got to take one piece out. I think so. And then you did a reading on it, and you also had to, identify who the piece of jewelry came from. And I remember getting it right at the time. That's about all I can remember about it. I think we've got some questions. That's fantastic.
We do, yes.
Yes.
So the first one is from, let me get my computer screen up a little bit, from Paul. Paul says, I have a question about a pendulum. If you were holding a pendulum and the vibrations running through it were very high, that it almost made it look like it was shaking, but what would that mean?
Ah, good question. I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
That's interesting.
So is that something that's happened to you, Paul? Let us know. Is that an actual experience that you've had?
Sounds like it.
It sounds like it, yes. To me, I don't really know. I mean, it almost looks, what I wanted to say is that you were channeling some kind of energy through your system. You're the one holding it, that somehow that you're channeling some kind of energy through your system. And so what I'm seeing is sort of like I'm seeing the vibration coming through the pendulum, but what does it mean? I think it just means that you're channeling that energy. So, is that energy that you're channeling, what is it? I'm wondering whether it's, maybe it's some kind of, possibly some kind of being, or maybe just some energy running through your system. I don't know. That's a bit of a mystery, Paul. Do you do it sometimes and it's actually working and giving you information by moving in circular patterns or back and forward patterns?
Yeah, pendulums are interesting. Yeah, working with a pendulum is working
Yeah,
with a pendulum is sometimes it can be tricky because you can't actually influence it. But if you do it properly, it's astounding. It's astounding how they work. Like it's amazing how the energy comes in. So Paul says, um, because I have to really focus on the pendulum holding still, so I can actually ask a question. So it sounds like it's moving before he even gets to ask a question.
right. Well, I mean, I think that might be something just to try a few different things. You know that there is energy that naturally is flowing down your arms, your healing energy, your creative energy. And so, I mean, I guess I've got two suggestions. One is like just dial your own energy back a little bit. So it's not, so perhaps you're not flowing such strong energy through. But the other thing is, it looks, I'm wondering whether there's a being that's interfering, perhaps. So maybe grounding your energy, before you do the pendulum work, grounding and running and clearing your own energy before you do the pendulum work. So preparing before you actually do it. And, if you want to learn how to ground, there is a free grounding meditation on my website, which involves basically creating a flow of energy from your first chakra to the center of the earth. And it acts kind of like a grounding wire in that it will help any excess energy that's coming through you to be channeled down to the center of the earth. So I think that might be a solution to that. The grounding helps you to stabilize your energy. It helps you to keep your energy field clear. It helps you to be present, but it also helps you to arc off excess energy. So to me, that's what it looked like, a vibrational, like excess energy coming through. So try sitting and meditating and grounding for a few minutes before you take your pendulum out and see if that makes a difference.
There's also if he does it in the same place all the time in his home, depending on where his home, like you were talking about ley lines a little while back, it could possibly be he's just right over a ley line.
Yeah, that's also possible. So you might try and do it in some different locations, somewhere that's more of a neutral energy.
Okay, we have a question from Heidi. And let me get the whole thing up in one shot here for you. So Heidi says, I've received items from friends, ex-boyfriends, co-workers that just didn't feel right. One particularly, I remember that was recently, wasn't ex-boyfriend's brother who had passed away. An incense burner that as soon as I seen and touched it, I wanted nothing to do with it. Actually, it's in a box downstairs for anybody that wants it for free. She's got a possessed box that she wants to give away. And she says, I've always been able to feel vibes in a room or even houses I've looked at to rent or buy. She also says, hello, Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, and thank you for sharing that. Very, very cool and interesting. I didn't hear every word Corey said, but I think you must have said at the beginning that she's had experiences with different objects.
Yeah, she says she received items from friends, ex-boyfriends, co-workers that just did not feel right. One particularly she remembers, it was recently. It wasn't an ex-boyfriend's. It was an ex-boyfriend's brother who had passed away. An incense burner that, as soon as she saw it, touched it, she wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, I also believe that you can clear the energy of objects. So if you do have an object that you actually quite like the look of, but it feels funky, then you can cleanse the object. You could actually even give the object itself a grounding cord and drain the energy within the object to move it back to its natural neutral state.
Natural neutral state. We have an associate here in the Vancouver Lower Mainland area who specifically does that. He removes energy from articles, from pieces of furniture people will buy at flea markets or auctions or things like that. And he removes the negative energy. He told me a couple of stories. One was a nightside table or a nightstand or a little side table type thing. And every time the woman went upstairs to the upstairs, this nightstand little table would fall over, and she couldn't figure it out. Yeah, and she just happened in on him one day, like at the spiritualist church, and he came over and I guess you could almost call it a little bit of an exorcism, but not quite an exorcism. So very interesting. But one of the things he did say, a lot of pieces that he used to work on were jewelry. When people would buy, a piece of jewelry from a pawn shop or from the estate sale or something like that, the jewelry had a lot of energy on it.
Yeah,
because the jewelry is so personal, right?
Yeah.
It's so personal.
And that's the other thing, if you've ever got like an heirloom piece of jewelry, or maybe, I think it's quite common for people to have, their mother's wedding ring or their mother's engagement ring. That's, for some people, that's a way to still feel close to somebody who's passed on, actually, is to wear their ring, because they're connecting with that person's energy, which is stored in that object.
Hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. I know I've played with pendulums. I enjoy pendulums. Pendulums are fun, and they really they can be frustrating though when you're expecting some sort of an answer from it, and they just sit there. Well, don't move, don't go small, don't go
Well, I would
move.
say my favorite is Corey created for me along years ago. I used to teach an aura workshop, and I wanted something to help make the aura feel more tangible to the students. And so we made these aura feelers, and we got some copper, not exactly wire, copper, very thin copper rods, and bent them over into an L shape and put the base into some straws. And then you basically hold them, and you can walk towards somebody. And when those copper rods hit the edge of their energy field, they spring open. And then when you move away, they close. So you can literally use them to feel the edge of somebody's energy field. And
Yeah,
they
that
work
those are
they work for
interesting,
dowsing and feeling different energy spots as well.
and they really work. I mean, they really work. You can feel you can feel the aura, and most people's auras are just energy fields are just about the same area out. And I worked with those once with changing um, changing the distance of your fear. Everybody has a fear thing, like a fight and flight aura around them, and most of those are quite a fair distance, anywhere between 7 and 12 feet usually. And we worked out with that, doing that, like reducing those fields, increasing those fields, and things like that. Also, I worked with, what was his name? The fella that we did, he changed, basically almost like a skin suit, changed his auras. Oh, what was his name? But anyway, those rods are a blast, and they really, really, really work.
Yeah, they do. And just one comment about what you were talking about, fear. I mean, you're going to have an aura of fear around you if you're in fear. If you're not in fear, then that's not going to be in your energy field. But when people are in fear, what tends to happen is that they lose their grounding, they lose their space, and the fear spreads out. So if you ever been in a room with a frightened person, the fear is tangible. You can pick up on it, and it's because that person, when they're afraid, they're not in control of their energy field anymore, and it tends to spread out to the whole room and over everybody else. So it's actually kind of an interesting thing to teach somebody to be in charge of their energy. Because here's the thing, if Corey mentioned, well, most people's energy field is about the same distance around them. But I think your auric field moves in and out depending on what circumstances you're in and how you're feeling. So, for example, if you're in an elevator that's crowded, most people pull their auric field in. If you're out in nature, most people spread their auric field out because they're enjoying nature. And there are some people who have a tendency to dominate the room. And often what they're doing is they're spreading their auric field to fill the entire room. And when that happens, everyone else that's sitting in the room is engulfed by this other person's energy. And it can feel uncomfortable, you know? And so, I guess it's cool to think about these aura sensing rods as a way of teaching people about what they're doing with their energy. Another common thing is people who are driving the car tend to fill the car with their energy. So any passengers in the car are sitting in their energy field as well, and therefore experiencing that person's energy. Anyway, time for another break. We'll be back after these messages.
Yes, we will.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning into Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
That's me.
Tonight's episode is part of our Intuition and Chakras series of podcasts, 22 in all. And tonight we're talking about psychometry. And it is the ability to read the energy in objects, and it involves the use of your 6th, 7th, and hand chakras. So we've been having a good old discussion about that, and I would say, like, really, let's open up the floor to questions from our listeners who are in the chat rooms. Yeah. And you can ask about psychometry or anything else about psychic abilities that you want to ask.
Well, we have a question from Heidi again, more of a comment. She says, I also had an entryway table that brought something dark with it, I guess she meant to say. I finally took it outside, and shortly after that to the curb, and the feeling of being watched and negativity went with it.
Ooh.
That's a good thing, Heidi.
Sounds like
did anybody take it home, or did they pick it up with the truck?
Yes, sounds like a possessed nightstand. But that reminds me, one of my favorite places in the world is the British Museum. And when I lived in London, I used to go there all the time. And my favorite place within the British Museum, which is huge and amazing, is the Hall of Egyptian Artifacts. And they have all of these Egyptian statues, different Egyptian deities. They have quite a few of these statues of Sekhmet and various other ones. And I used to I think that some of those statues you actually can, or you used to be able to touch. And I used to go there and tune into the energy in the statues and read the energy in the statues. And the ancient Egyptian priests used to deliberately program the statues with energy. So they would be, a guardian to a temple watching over, or they would have a fertility spell or a spell to help the inundation of the Nile and the fertility of the Nile. And so it was quite fascinating to go and just read the energy of these statues. And my second favorite place in there is the Mayan gallery. And they've got these amazing Mayan tablets, which you can't touch. They're behind glass. And it's interesting to see these different scenes of what's common life at that time depicted on the tablets. And from our perspective, it's hard to really understand what are they doing and why are they doing it. But if you tune in psychically, then you can read the object and intuit accurate information about what it was that they were up to. Because, I'll tell you another thing that pops into my mind is you can, so we all read books, or we used to, didn't we? Before we all had Kindles and so on. So, there's information in a book, and it's in the written word, and you go through that information in a linear fashion. All the information is in the book now that I'm holding in my hand. To unpack the information with my intellect, I have to go and I have to read every word. I'll tell you a funny story. years ago, I used to teach from the place where I did my psychic training. And a friend of mine was a teacher there too. And one evening she was alone and a man came in off the street and he said, I'm new to this planet. And I'm a bit confused about how it all works. And, can you help me? And she said, oh, I'd be delighted to help you. And they had, a funny discussion. Like she explained about money, and he literally just opened a wallet and manifested like this huge wad of money. But the other thing he did was she pointed him to the bookshelf and said, well, here's these spiritual books that have a lot of information. And so he just basically went, oh yes, I see, they're really good books, thank you very much. And he didn't open them. So make of that what you will. But if you think also about ancient texts, whether it's the Bible or other writings from history, there's the literal word and there's the deeper meaning behind the word. And if we can absorb that information from our intuition rather than from our logical mind, that's how we get the deeper meaning. Because in a lot of those books, it's taught through metaphor, parables, stories, fables, and so on. And so you can take it on the surface level in a literal way, or you can unlock the deeper hidden information within the story. And you do that with your intuition, you do that with your psychic abilities.
Well, there's a speed reading course that would sell well.
Yeah.
I can see all these people at the library go, ooh.
I probably should have explained for the people listening on the radio when I was telling that story, but basically what the man did was he just put his hand on the book and sort of scanned it up and down.
Without opening it.
Without opening it, yeah, as though he'd read the book. Now, I'm sure if the wrong people discovered him, he'd probably end up getting some help from some doctors. But on the other hand, maybe he was new to this planet.
You never know. Andarini says, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen says, no late fees. Okay, we have a question here from Jillian. Jillian says, I live in a very close proximity to where a major historic event took place. When I go on walks around the area, I feel compelled to touch the different monuments, trees, and etc. in the area. Sometimes I feel like I'm picking up on the energy in the area, but I'm having trouble separating what I know to be true from my intuition, as I know what took place here. Am I actually picking up on what happened here, or is this just an overactive imagination?
Well, and that's a really good question. And I get that question a lot, especially from my psychic development students. It's like, how can I tell the difference between my intuition and my imagination? How can I tell the difference between my intuition and my intellect? And that's really one of the, first challenges or blocks that people have to overcome in developing their intuition, because we are so trained in our intellect, and we study things and we get information and we have it all sorted and packaged within our intellect. And then we are doubtful of our intuition. And so how do you know the difference? Well, first off, if doubt is coming into the picture, the one that's inserting the doubt is your intellect. And so usually what might happen is that we will get an intuitive insight and we need to just accept that instantly. But if we start doubting, then what's happening is you're starting to process the intuitive insight through the intellect, and the intellect's going, oh, I don't know, it's not linear like I'm used to. Maybe it's wrong. And so, the intuition is instantaneous information. It arrives instantly, you perceive it instantly, and the intellect is linear, and so it takes time and effort to process things through the intellect. So that would be one difference. So I think that you've got kind of like a combo going on. You've got your intuition and your intellect, and they're competing with each other a little bit in that situation. And how do you know the difference between your imagination and your intuition? Well, they're very similar. So let's talk about the example of clairvoyance, which is the ability to see as spirit. So let's say you touch a tree and you see an image of a battle that took place in history, right? And then you're going, well, I know there was a battle here. So that's your intellect. I know there was a battle here. And then it's doubting that this is anything other than, something you know. And yet you saw the picture. So then you go, well, I'm seeing this picture. How do I know I'm really seeing this picture? And it is my clairvoyance showing me this picture, or I'm just making this picture up with my imagination. And so what would be the difference? So imagination, you are projecting a thought form. And this is actually how we create our reality. We create it in a non-physical way first. So if you projected the image of a battle, it might look the same or similar to you reading the image of a battle, right? But the difference is, one is you're reading the energy, the other, the imagination, you're projecting. It's a projection that's coming from you. It's a thought form that you're creating. The other one, it's a pre-existing thought form that you're reading, that's embedded within, saved, that the tree has stored that information because the tree was around at the time that the battle happened. I hope that gives some definition or explanation. So in both cases, you're reading an electromagnetic energy structure. In the case of reading it stored in the tree, it's stored in the tree. You're not projecting the image, you're just reading it. In the case of your imagination, you're projecting the image. In both cases, you're reading it with your clairvoyance.
Or it could be a past life memory.
Yes.
So let's just throw that one in to confuse everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen says, when I have done Reiki, sometimes I feel a tangible bubble. I can push on it. Is that what you were talking about? Is that what you're saying? This goes back a little ways.
Oh, I don't know what I was saying back a little ways. Am I talking about a bubble?
I can take this one. Actually, what you're feeling is an energy, depending on, especially with Reiki, when you're doing signs and things like that, especially when you're healing, you're really calling forth a lot of energy. And so, yeah, you can feel a tangible bubble. You can sometimes, some people feel that. Some people feel air rushing air, like a breeze. And everyone can feel that. If you take your hands, the palms of your hands together, and keep them separate about an inch apart, and then take them out to about 4 inches and come back, and just keep doing this back and forth from an inch to 4 inches, inch to 4 inches, inch to 4 inches, and just focus on it. Sooner or later, you'll actually feel a bubble in between your hands. You'll feel the energy force there. It's quite tangible.
Yeah.
So that's maybe what you're feeling, is that type of an energy that's actually solid energy.
I see.
It's all the same.
Yeah. The question referred to when I was talking about feeling energy with your hands, I guess. So yeah, that is what I was talking about.
I have another question from Omar. Omar says, how much Kundalini can one channel? Can it be unlimited?
That's a good question. I would say that in a human body, there is a limited capacity to how much energy you can channel through a human body. So the Kundalini energy is a highly transformational energy. It is a spiritualizing force, and it will take anything in its path that is out of alignment, and it will transform it. So if you blast your body with Kundalini energy, you will overwhelm the body. And a more practical approach is to prepare the body for running the Kundalini energy, first by running other gentler energies through the system and healing the body and getting the body attuned, and then learning to run the Kundalini energy little by little and more by more by more, as a process for it to be comfortable for the body. Because if you don't, that's when you end up with these uncomfortable Kundalini experiences. So for example, if your body isn't used to you running Kundalini and then you blast it with Kundalini for, let's say you run it for a day really powerfully, the next day you might be on your knees, on your back, on the floor, unable to move because of an emotional release or a physical release or something else. And so I would say we need to be careful with respect to how much Kundalini energy we are running. And I would also say that if you run an unlimited amount of Kundalini energy through your body, you would probably spontaneously combust. So I wouldn't recommend just blasting it through your system, Omar. And in fact, how I teach my students to run their Kundalini is they first of all learn to ground, to run earth and cosmic energies through their body, to spend some time healing their body and transforming it in a slow, gentle way, and then slowly introducing the Kundalini energy, running it at, and everybody's different. So, you know, my 100% Kundalini that I can run might be different than your 100% Kundalini, because it's totally unique to you. But I certainly wouldn't even advocate you running your Kundalini at 100%. I would say start really gentle, start at 10%, and you will know if you've run too much, because you will get a reaction afterwards if you've run too much. Anyway, I am getting the signal that this is the end of the show. So I hope that's given you some information. Listeners, tonight's Unlocking Your Truth was in our Intuition and Chakras series. We were talking about psychometry. And I don't know what we're talking about next week, but I think it might be telekinesis.
No, it's healing.
Healing. Lovely.
Yes, which goes actually quite well with this show.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for all of you that tuned in, and we will see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock Pacific time.
Take care, everyone.